Can you tell me about the reaction that you're hearing from EV drivers or prospective drivers?
Yeah, there's lots of speculation about the types of vehicles that we might be seeing over the next few months and then the next 5 years, as the distribution networks build up for possibly Chinese brands coming into Canada. Over the past 5, 6 years, I've spoken with thousands of EV drivers and those who want to get into an EV, and there's always a great deal of curiosity about these other brands, and an awareness that throughout most of the world, people get to experience these brands and maybe some more advanced technology, especially in terms of batteries, that are associated with the Chinese builds.
Yeah, it's interesting that lack of awareness here. I was in Asia last year, and there was so much familiarity with Chinese EVs, and I was hearing from people in the Philippines saying this is actually the BYD cars are much more common than say an American like a Tesla or something like that. Of course, we don't know much about the Chinese brands here in Canada. Can you tell us more about what kinds of cars and what kinds of price points we might see?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's one vehicle that comes up a lot. It's made by the manufacturer BYD, and it's called the Seagull, and it's a little compact hatchback. And I see people kind of speculating that it could come in at $20,000. So it's going to be interesting to see just in terms of how the manufacturers and the brands deal with the quota or the like the import cap that we have to
Mm.
see what actually comes in because they will still be trying to maximize profits.
Okay, so I mean, $20,000, that is a big gap from what's available now.
Yeah, I mean EV or gas, right? Like it's not common to see any sort of new vehicle in Canada around $20,000.
Right. So are you saying that because there's a cap of 49,000 annually, that may actually affect the kinds of cars that come in that perhaps China will not opt for those, most affordable brands to try and maximize profit?
Um, it's just going to be really interesting to see what kind of strategy that they take, and what kind of regulations that the Canadian federal government puts in place. And as we look forward to the target of sub $35,000 electric vehicles, um, I think that we can also look back at say 2024, before we had the 100% tariffs,
Hmm.
and we were bringing in Chinese built vehicles under familiar brands. We weren't necessarily getting right down to the $35,000 price point. But now there's more of an expectation built into that, and I think that's the big part that are of course really excited about, that it's going to put some downward pressure on prices.
Okay. And what do you think of that cap, at least to start, of 49,000 Chinese EVs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a small part of the overall Canadian market, that comes in at around 3%. And I've seen the goal of sub $35,000 on half of that amount
Right.
within 5 years. So that's a fairly small amount. But it's also understandable that it's a measured approach um, to try and give some reassurance to the Canadian auto workers, working with existing brands, and and also to acknowledge that it's a new relationship, and that everybody, of course, wants to see electric vehicles built in Canada, and hopefully get that set up.
And yes, you raised there the concerns for the Canadian auto industry, and that's something that Doug Ford has really been hammering, right, over the last few days. He calls this a massive threat to Canadian auto manufacturing, much of which is in Ontario. How concerned are you about that, the potential threat to Canada's own industry?
Well, like I said, the current cap on imports, that's that's a fairly small amount of the Canadian auto market. So that alone, I don't think is going to turn the auto market on its head. But I know that there are a lot of just concerns with parts manufacturing, that sort of thing, and the idea that Canada is trying to build up its own infrastructure um, in terms of manufacturing, and that they don't want this to throw a wrench in that process. So I think it's going to be really, really important to keep an eye on what the federal government is doing, working with Ontario to try and make sure that we are leveraging this new relationship to set up Canadian manufacturing.
Something else that Premier Ford has raised, and we've heard from others as well, is this concern about data privacy and security. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's again just part of the regulations that we have to have and that we have to enforce. We all know that our devices, including our vehicles, are already collecting a lot of information from us. Again, the amount of vehicles that we're bringing in initially is a fairly measured amount. Um, and I think there's going to be quite a process of tweaking regulations to make sure it's done in the best way possible, and that's what everyone's going to be looking out for.
Yeah, it sounds like there is still a lot of speculation about this, right? And wondering about how this will roll out. If I can ask you then, here in BC, something we've always heard about when it comes to EVs is yes, you can get an EV, but what about the charging infrastructure? I mean, do we have that now to support an uptick in ownership?
We do have a really great charging infrastructure in BC, and it keeps getting better and better. Um, Through BC Hydro, through Fortis, and then through local governments and private operators who install fast charging stations. I as part of my work trips throughout the year, take EVs on long trips, into northern BC and throughout the province. So it is really good, and there's lots of momentum about making it even better.
And ultimately, do you think people will buy? There's buzz right now, but will there be a market?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, the only thing that has impacted the current sort of decline in the market is sort of financial maybe confusion coming out of the States and tariffs, that kind of thing. So really, it's all about affordability because the vehicle technology has just gotten better. The charging technology has just gotten better. So really, it's all about hitting that affordability price point.
Michael, thank you very much for this. Appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you.
Michael Stanyer is the communications manager with the Fraser Basin Council.